Usually, car enthusiasts have a rocky relationship with Big Brother government, but sometimes they pull a massive W for us in our times of need. Here are 5 laws that saved car enthusiasts. Banning subscription services. New Jersey and Pennsylvania are attempting to ban car subscription services such as BMW's Heated Seats for $18 a month. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly recommend you watch my previous video where I rant about the sorry state of modern cars. However, it looks like there is some hope, as if consumers feel helpless to push back against corporations, it looks like bureaucrats and governments aren't taking it sitting down. Even though these heated seats are literally still installed in the car and the button for them is right there, there is a software that is programmed to essentially override your ability to freely toggle these seats on and off, and instead telling you that you must attach credit card info to pay for a monthly subscription. Thankfully, New Jersey and Pennsylvania weren't having any of that, and I don't use this word much, but I'm going to use it here. That's so incredibly based. Literally the most based law ever to be conceived, legislated, and hopefully passed. Not just in these 2 states, I want this law in every state in the US, and I would love to see it in Europe as well. Car owners, not just car enthusiasts, we should all stand united on this one. We, the collective car owners, enthusiast or commuter or otherwise, should not be extorted for microtransactions on cars we already own with the features that are already installed. The worst part is, I bet that if the heated seats ever broke, BMW probably would still make you, the consumer, pay to get it fixed on top of the subscription service, meaning the subscription service is completely pointless. Because if we don't give in to their corporate greed, then they won't waste their time developing these stupid attempts ever again. So when this finally becomes banned worldwide, BMW will stop wasting their time and resources developing subscription services and instead hopefully go back to making beautiful cars again. And that doesn't just go for BMW. I know it sounds like I'm ragging on them, but remember, GM, Lexus, Tesla, there are a lot of companies that are guilty of trying to use microtransactions, and hopefully we see these phased out. Antique status. Many states, yes, even California recently, have a law called antique status, which basically protects classic or vintage cars, vehicles of 25 years or older or 35 years or older, depending on state and the regulation changes, of course. Some states have had this for a while, but like I said, other states have very recently adopted it. But what this entails is that older vehicles do not have to take part in emissions or vehicle inspections, and this law is great from a historical standpoint because it lets car enthusiasts own older cars and exist as the time capsule from their era. Also, this is just a great standpoint again from a consumer rights side of things. Like, many OEM catalytic converters are long out of production for these cars, especially if it's a car from a company that no longer exists, like Plymouth or Pontiac. So good luck getting a factory catalytic converter for a car that literally doesn't have a home factory around anymore making said equipment. So I'm glad even California realized how ridiculous that OEM requirement was for emission checks on vehicles that were vintage. There already aren't that many classics on the road anyway, so the effort it would take to force the owners to modernize them from a safety, performance, and emission standards would basically be a violation of their consumer rights. Think about this. If you've owned a car that you bought 25 years ago and you just kept the entire time, and at the time of your purchase 25 years ago, that car had legally passed all vehicle inspections and emission standards and was rated to be factory safe at the time period, as well as EPA standard meeting at the time period, it's not your consumer responsibility to update that vehicle 25 years later, because you don't have the millions of R&D funds to make a brand new OEM catalytic converter for it that passes modern standards. You'd be lucky if you could go on eBay and find the OEM one that obviously still doesn't even meet modern standards. So it's a good thing that we have this antique status law, because obviously corporations, right, they can afford to innovate and engineer more efficient catalytic converters that can meet stringent EPA guidelines, as well as safety features and other guidelines that modern cars have to follow. And again, that's their responsibility. You as the individual, however, you shouldn't be held responsible for meeting these brand new standards, because again, you don't have the millions of dollars of R&D funds to change your car that you've kept for 25 years. I'm not a tree hugger, but I'm also not an Earth hater either. It's literally the planet we live on, right? After saying that though, it's a good thing to realize that the only thing more wasteful than emitting a bit more more pollutive gases is throwing away a perfectly working car. These days, consumerism has people so ridiculously infected by clout and fear of missing out that consumers are buying cars as often as 5 years. I've already talked about this in another video, and trust me, it's just as awful as it sounds. You'll have to watch it there, but more or less tying that back into here, I think encouraging people to keep older cars and even making these laws to protect them not only is a basic consumer right, but it's also a great way to prevent society from opening up a ton of new mines every week, next to neighborhoods even, digging up for more iron and coal, making more steel mills, killing more cows for more leather, and forging more aluminum for frames. So it's far less sustainable to convince consumers to constantly throw away cars every so years than to just say, yo, look, if you want to keep an old car, you can keep an old car. Again, these aren't consumers being malicious anti-environmentalists, quite the opposite. A lot of them are just trying to save money and just trying to get by. There are a lot of people who still drive cars from the 90s, which, by the way, is a 25-year-older car for the people who need to be reminded of just how much time has passed, because I know some people, when they think of 25 years old, are still thinking of 60s and 70s cars. No, 90s cars now qualify for this law, and people still use them as commuters. There are a lot of 90s cars that are just used for that purpose, and those people don't want to buy a brand new car, and they shouldn't have to. I know this may sound weird coming from a YouTuber, but this law may directly apply to me as well someday. I will legitimately have a Corvette that will someday be 25 years or older. You bet when the electric apocalypse happens, I'm going to ride out the full antique status as long as I can. The day this law disappears is the day car enthusiasm will truly begin to die. No matter how numbered those days may be, you can always still count on me to document every last detail of cars, so make sure to subscribe if you enjoy automotive content and like this video. Moving on to the next entry is the Slowpoke law. If me and the homies decide to go 20 over together, they can't pull us all over. So you still have to take this within reason, and the law itself has a clause that also states within reason. So you can't just all collectively agree to speed that much over and not expect any consequences. However, though, the main reason this law was made wasn't for the outliers of that situation. It's mostly made for people commuting to work when the highways are super busy. People in the farthest left lane tend to go a bit faster during peak traffic times, or at least they would like to, because it's good for efficient traffic flow. Because of that, they're usually going 10, maybe even 15 over. And it doesn't matter if Karen is already going the speed limit, it's her fault actually, as the people behind her aren't maliciously tailgating her, as she would actually be the one breaking the law in this circumstance. The furthest left lane now has a slowpoke law in many of the states in the United States. It's your time to go. If you don't want to go the same flow of traffic they're going, it's your time to leave that lane. You have to let them pass you. That is why it's referred to as a passing lane. You're not supposed to hog that lane. You do not get to determine the speed of that lane anymore. Now, of course, this law is very recent and also has iffy issues with enforcement, so a lot of officers are still not fully trained on it. Some officers are very well trained with the slowpoke law. Some are counterintuitively making it worse though, where they'll still pull people over. The best suggestion I could give you is try not to be the leader of the pack and try not to be at the tail end of the pack, because the person at the front is the first person that's seen by any traffic patrol officer that's sitting on the highway. The last person is the easiest one to get picked off, because then the cop will wait for the whole pack to pass and then go for the last one, because obviously by the time they react and join, they pull out the tail end. They don't randomly shoot for someone in the middle. This law, while it does not just benefit car enthusiasts, it does benefit traffic flow as a whole, is very iffy with how it's enforced. So because of that, it's not quite a big W yet. So we'll just move on to other great laws for car enthusiasts. Another great law that I like are the concept of freeways, or states without toll roads. If you ever wonder why freeways are called freeways, is because they are free. So a highway that has a toll road would not be referred to as a freeway, or at least that's how it's supposed to be, but I know some places still refer to them as that. That's not how this works, Texas. While Pennsylvania has a massive W with banning subscription services on cars, they still have way too many toll roads. I'm flying over your toll roads next time. If I ever get wealthy enough, I will literally get a helicopter and just dangle my car over the toll roads just to flex that I don't need to pay to get over them. That's a joke, obviously. Everyone knows I'm not actually going to Pennsylvania. Not because I don't like Pennsylvania, but because I don't actually leave my house, and that my entire YouTube channel is actually an auto-generated ChatGPT robot that just watches and studies car trends and then makes videos accordingly. Therefore meaning that I have no physical presence to ever traverse state boundaries, much less the virtual boundary of this YouTube channel into real life. Run while you still can. The final law in this video is by far the most important law ever made, the right to repair. This wasn't something that needed to be explicitly stated when technology was simpler. A lot of things could be repaired by the everyday man or someone who just kind of gave it enough glances or even disassembled it a bit with some practice. Obviously, technology is a vastly complicated thing, so a lot of things need more thorough instructions and even training to fix. At the end of the day, not everyone's able to fix something even given the instructions, but it's still our right to understand or be given those instructions to begin with, and the chance that we can then take it to a third party like a smaller mom and pop mechanic shop that will repair instead of a big dealership. The right to repair, explained, is basically a legal right for owners of devices and equipment to freely modify and repair those products, such as automobiles, electronics, and farm equipment. This right is framed in opposition to restrictions such as requirements to use only the manufacturer's maintenance services, restrictions on access to tools and components, and software barriers. This is a fairly recent law, but one responsible for the simplification of cars over the few years, as well as reducing the use of bespoke dealer repair equipment. But honestly, this law will likely save us and have lasting impacts, hopefully for the next several decades. A lot of corrupt corporations, especially luxury automakers at the time, attempted to create harder and harder to repair cars, requiring rarer and rarer tools, more and more training, and less available knowledge, be it the lack of manuals and guides. In 2012, the United States signed into action the right to repair. In 2015, the European Union followed soon after, and India as well. These nations realized the blatant abuse of consumer rights and therefore established the right to repair. Some companies as recent as 2023 are still getting caught attempting to circumnavigate this right, or are just now starting to give into it, knowing that if they continue to resist it, they can be sued for lots and lots of money in federal court. John Deere recently, in January of this year, reached a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation. Apple in 2022 began to more openly enable consumers to have access to repair their phones, as well as provide them with better knowledge of how to take apart some of their phones. This being a very recent law means that some companies are still cheesing by or possibly have not yet undergone investigation and therefore have yet to be regulated by this law, and they don't have to be scrutinized by it. It being a recent law also means that it's vulnerable to amendments, both for the better or worse, or it can even be outright repealed. Once a law, however, settles in for decades or even a century, then the citizens of a nation will never let it go at that point. That has literally become an established basic right. We've become really comfortable with it, and we will even be willing to die to protect it. The right to repair should be treasured, not just by car enthusiasts, but by everyone, and none of us should ever loosen our grip on it. Because it's such a young right, I know corporations are still right now trying to find backdoors in this law and any of its writing, and trying to maybe even sneak in some of their people into bureaucratic systems, try to even modify or amend this law in a way that benefits them while screwing over the consumer. Hopefully, time treats this law better than it does others, and hopefully we as consumers continue to protect this law. And again, I will reassert that so far this is probably one of the greatest laws ever to be made in recent history, and I hope that it remains as strong as it does right now and is upheld by consumers in the coming decades. Call out greedy companies who deny us this right. Now that it's been made, it is our right, and they're the ones committing an illegal act by denying us this right. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy automotive content, then make sure to check out my other videos. Share this video to your friends, and if you don't have any friends, then share it to your pet koi fish. Other than that, see y'all next time. Blade Angel out.